We planted all different species. So we have fig trees and pluot trees and apple trees and mulberry trees. This area here is an alfalfa field that we use to cut several times throughout the year and use it as mulch and fertilizer for the rest of our gardens. And we're really big on artichokes and nettles and lemon balm to kind of be the fillers on the berm.
Do you have any thoughts on sustainability in general, and what measures have you taken towards it?
I think one major aspect of sustainability is not wanting more than you really need. And so finding a way not just to tailor, not just to be able to create and to bring in the resources that you need to do whatever it is you want to do, which is one side of the balance. But the other side of the balance is being observant about where you are, what's around you, what resources are available to you, and then kind of fitting into that mold. And to be sustainable in that sense, to me, means not pushing your environment beyond what it can naturally support. So there's an element of personal responsibility and simplifying your life if necessary to accommodate that. And so I think that's an important aspect of it for me. When you really start to go there and to trust your environment, you realize that just how abundant it actually is. And where at first glance it might seem that you're having to give up a lot to be sustainable, then you start tuning into actually how many resources are available to you, and if you can just be creative and open-minded about how that might look to you, you can actually start obtaining a lot back from your system. It starts to feel like wealth and real wealth. And after a while, I don't even really feel that I'm sacrificing anything to have this lifestyle. I feel like I've gained way more than I've given up.
Do you have any thoughts on minimalism as a lifestyle?
I think it's the only way. It's the way of the future. I mean, I have a personal motto that I read out of a homesteading book a long time ago, that use it up, wear it out, make it do, or do without. Mm-hmm. And so we really practice that here, and just not producing a lot of waste, growing a lot of our own food, not really staying away from buying things to help us grow food. We really hustle for that, finding those things locally, and just really teaching children that they don't need to have all of these things to have a good life is a big part of that. And more or less is something I've practiced throughout my life, but much more so in a very conscious way in the last 10 years or more.
I think about it all the time, to be honest. I mean, minimalism is something that comes really natural to me. It's just kind of a product of my own drive towards efficiency and what we were talking about earlier, not wanting more than you need and finding your own kind of humble place in the grand scheme of things. With that being said, I don't think that minimalism is something that I get to enjoy as much at this phase of my life. Being, a householder, so to speak, actively raising kids in this moment, and actively constructing my homestead in this moment. I think I have to be, I'm called to take on responsibilities and to be aware of, a whole level of logistical reasoning through how I'm doing things, and trying to connect points with, where's resource coming from, how am I using it, and then how am I returning it back into the flow and the course of my life. I appreciate minimalism where I see it, and it's something that, I hope to cultivate at some point in my life. It makes me think of, in the kind of Hindu conception of a human life, they kind of break the life of a person down into these constituent parts, and you kind of go from being a student to being a householder, to being a spiritual aspirant, and then finally into being kind of like someone who, having gone through the stages of life and experienced the world, is now ready to give up those things, really just focus on liberating themselves from the attachment to all of that. And so I see myself very firmly rooted in the householder element of my life right now, and I'm not sure how much of a part I have been able to find for minimalism in that approach. But, when I think of like the longer picture of my life, it's something that I hope to continue to appreciate now and continue to cultivate every day, now and in the future.
What is your biggest complaint about the average or typical American lifestyle?
Disconnectedness is a major issue. Disconnected from other humans, other communities, food systems, families, disconnected from the earth. Just having that full disconnect from the natural world and natural relations and natural ways of living and eating has us all running on a low battery. And so low consciousness, more connection in all those ways, because it's helping us, and you see it all around you, even if it's just something as simple as going to a gathering once a year and feeling that connection. Your feet are on the earth, you're holding hands, you're singing songs, you're sharing meals with people, and people feel so charged up by such simple things. And so gratitude, and cultivating that, and really, going out of our way to find that connection. It's there.
The answer that comes to mind first is just the excess and the largesse of what the typical American feels that they need to have in order to have a secure and abundant life. By that I mean, I feel like growing up in this modern era where so much is available to us so easily, we become entitled to feeling that it's just our right to have these things. It's our right to be able to use the internet whenever we want, to have electricity whenever we want, to be able to eat whatever kind of food we want in any place at any season. And it's like, things that even just a few generations ago would have been luxuries now seem like necessities. And we all feel like we have this inalienable right to live that life. And so I used to feel that was my biggest gripe with like mainstream American culture, but kind of going off what I was just talking about realizing how much resource is available to you if you are observant enough and open-minded enough to see it. I think what it really comes down to is I think people are too slow to adopt new ideas. I mean, one of the things that got us to where we are today, to be able to even enjoy all the things I just talked about, was a spirit of ambitious innovation that really like drove our society to find new ways to better what we wanted to call our quality of life. I think a lot of the things that are hurting us today weren't initially meant to do so. I think at the time, these technologies or these practices seemed like a really good idea, and they seemed like an improvement over where we had come from. But somewhere along the way, I feel that we kind of lost that drive to continue to find new ways to improve. And so I think that a lot of people nowadays feel that they really need their lives to look like their parents' lives or their grandparents' lives. And we have this sense of like, that's what people have had, and I want to have that too, because I saw those things work, and I saw them work for me and be comfortable. But most of our technologies and our manufacturing practices are just terribly outdated. I believe we can have many of the same things that we have, and we can have a very similar lifestyle, by just kind of tweaking the way we make things, what we make our products out of, how we return energy back into the environment that we took from it, so that there can be more of a consistent cycling of resources rather than just mining resources and then wasting them in a way that it's very hard for them to return to nature. And so I think trying to hold on too much to the practices of the past and not being willing to accept that there are always going to be newer and better ways to do things is something that is really, it's holding us back culturally, and it's getting to a point where it's starting to affect our survival if we don't find the courage within ourselves and the faith to try to do things better and more efficiently and keep that spirit of innovation that got us this far.
It's like there are the surface levels that, I guess complaint is like a complicated word, but like surface level ideas of what the average American lifestyle is that I disagree with, like just health-wise, like the food that we eat, but all of that like traces back to my bigger complaints about society and like which comes from deeper problems. So I have complaints about capitalism, quite a few of them, and I think this capitalistic structure that we're set in, that's so based on hierarchy, has set up a system that's going to lead to misery. And so it's sad to see so many people who are in jobs that they hate and think that they have to do that and that's the only way to live life, and like that, and then they get sucked into that, and then it's like they retire, and then by that time they're like way too old and miserable to actually do anything with their life, and it's just this horrible cycle. And it's totally, there's like that kind of like middle class struggle cycle of like just being trapped within this American dream of success, and it's like never gonna get you anywhere. And then there's a whole nother massive amount of people that are stuck in another cycle, and like the cycle of poverty and of oppression, and like that's a huge part of what the American lifestyle is either you are stepping on the backs of other people or you're getting stepped on, and it's just like this really terrible like hierarchy that we have set up that, you know, plays into like class and race and gender and sexuality and like all of these other ways that we separate and oppress people. Like all of those problems like reflect back into that like 50s nuclear family and the issues that are there. And like this idea of the average American lifestyle being that, which isn't actually true. So it's just like, you know, it's like, what are my complaints of the average American lifestyle? Like America and like this whole system of capitalism and patriarchy and hierarchy, like all of it.